Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to open up January 2020 meeting of the Newbury Conservation Commission. Did the members get a chance to read the minutes of September 17th, 2019?
Yes.
Did they note any errors or omissions?
No.
I will entertain a motion then to accept them and place them on file.
So moved.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Did the members get a chance to read the minutes of October 15th, 2019?
Yes.
Again, did they note any errors or omissions?
No.
I will entertain a motion then to accept them and place them on file.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I abstain, I wasn't here. Did the members get a chance to read the minutes of November 19th, 2019?
Yes.
Same question, any errors or omissions noted?
No. No. I'll move to accept the minutes.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We do not have a continued notice of intent for the town of Newbury, but I know there are a couple people here. We have a date to set down the bottom of the page. Why don't we get to it right now? This hearing will not recommence until the town re-notifies. But before that, I would like to have a meeting with this board and any concerned citizens relative to that 14th Street right-of-way. And what I'd like to try and do tonight is set a date for that meeting. 1 second, Jim, I'll get to you.
Okay.
Sooner rather than later, or, I know we've got another meeting this month. Do you want to do it before that or afterwards?
I'm content with before.
You can tell me before?
Or after, I'm easy.
Could be done, the same date as the next meeting, you wanna do it sooner.
Next week, 21st. Or what?
It could be done the same date as the next meeting. Do you want to start it? Do you want to start it a little earlier? You want to start at 6 o'clock the night of the next meeting on the 21st, is it?
Do you think that will allow adequate time?
I mean, if you need a dedicated day, let's do it.
I don't think we need a dedicated day. I think a dedicated hour would certainly be enough to listen to concerns. Then at that date, we would likely set a site visit to go down there where we could all go visit and have abutters there, and then maybe pick it up at the next meeting. We'll see how that goes.
There are no other meetings here that day,
So we could start at 6.
Start early, yeah.
Jim, I know, excuse me, Mr. Stewart?
Yes,
I know
sir.
that you wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, Jim Stewart, 22 Old Point, do I need to come up front?
Yeah, okay, for the record,
That's fine, thank you.
no problem.
Yeah, so that was the brunt of my first question. Is it continued or are we notifying?
It's not continued.
Right.
I should have dropped this off here a long time ago, because I think they made the statement, I don't know, it was 6 or 8 months ago, Jim, that the town wasn't gonna go forward until we re-advertised. I wouldn't let a single family home sit this long, so
Right.
I'm not gonna let the town sit this long.
Okay. Do you have any sense of the timeline that would bring us again after re-notification to an actual hearing? Do you think that would be like February or March?
It would likely be February,
Okay,
and it would likely be February 18th. That would be our next regularly scheduled hearing in February.
okay.
So possibly we could have it ready for then.
And will there be a revised plan presented
Maybe.
prior to?
Maybe, you'll see the plan of record that we have now, and
Right.
then we'll take input from abutters and our own input from a site visit, and you may see a revised plan after that.
We may actually see that on the 21st at 6 p.m. if that's when we're gonna do that.
I doubt you'd see it on the 21st, because that's when we're gonna, at 6 o'clock is when we're gonna have the work session for it.
Okay.
Not a continued hearing, but just a work group, so we can all sit around the table and we can talk about it.
So my other thing was consideration about the date, but the only block out we had is the 21st doesn't affect it. So I think we're all good with
Okay.
that. That works.
Okay.
And on the continuance, I had a couple of other
Sure, go ahead.
questions, should be real quick. Is there any new, is there any consideration, or would you consider any new alternative plan analysis? Since the old one was, I think, 2009, and some things have changed out there?
Of course we would. If we can find a route with less impacts, we take it in a heartbeat. It's one of the reasons we picked this one, and if we're wrong and someone points that out to us, great, we'll listen to another engineer.
Okay,
Sure,
great.
sure.
Then the last one on this, and the rest of the questions were logistics about what is now the 21st meeting, which should just take a minute, and we could just be done. One question we did have was, Tracy indicated, I think it was on the 26th at a selectmen's meeting, that there was some kind of ongoing dialogue between the town and the state around this project.
We need a DEP number. And one of the things that they want is they want a justification for this, this access way. And so we've got two of them that I've recently melded together. They're gonna go to Tom Hughes, who is representing us, and they'll go to the state will give us the DEP number. Receipt of a DEP number is not an approval or disapproval of a project. It's only an acknowledgement that they have a complete application.
Okay, and then we could get access to that same, whatever's submitted to the state.
It's a public document and it goes in the file.
Do you have any idea when that would be going?
No.
And if you don't,
No,
right,
honestly,
okay,
yeah.
fair enough, yeah. And then the other stuff was just logistics for what is now the 21st meeting. You're just calling it a working session for now, there's no agenda or topics?
This is the topic. The right of way is the topic.
Okay. Is that a meeting that's open to the public?
Absolutely.
Okay. And the public will be notified the same way as any other meeting that's held? With the agenda being.
This will be noted on the agenda for next month. It will not show up in the newspaper. It's not gonna be a legal message that you're gonna get. You're not gonna get certified mail. So if you can get the word out, I know that you and Al have a pretty good mailing list for the folks. So I would do my best to get it out to them.
And it'll be filmed and recorded, so it's available to the public that can't make it?
Yeah, it can be, sure. Yeah, why not? It's a
maybe
good idea to do it
Because
anyway.
maybe
So,
some people can't.
Yeah.
But it won't be a voting meeting?
no,
Okay.
no, we can't vote at that meeting.
And will the film and conversation and the notes go on the public record?
Well, yes, I
Of
think they
that
should.
working session?
Yeah, I think they should. They would.
Yep.
I don't see why not.
And you're not sure if an alternative plan will be presented at that meeting or not, and we're good with the date?
No, I can tell you that I have no thoughts that an alternate plan will be in as far as a shift in where.
No, I meant a modified
Oh.
to the existing,
Potentially, but not, I would doubt that you'd see it on the 21st. You'd see it the
Not-
following month.
not sure,
Yep.
okay. And we dealt with my other thing, which was the date, so I'm good.
Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
See you on the 21st.
Okay, thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak on that? So the 21st at 6 o'clock, we will meet for a working group on the 14th Street right-of-way. We have a continued notice of intent to demolish and reconstruct a single-family home from Helen and Brian Buer at 16 Plum Island Boulevard. Good evening.
Oh, good evening. I can read these. at our last meeting, we believe everything went well, and what we were asked to do was, to get a list, of these items. What was being looked for by, the commission, in which we have since applied $150 additional filing fee, a cross-sectional drawing of the lot. Also, this was requested by the DEP, which, we have provided. Yeah, actually, one on the back of that. Assurance that, the opening between the lowest, sidewall member is at minimum 2 feet. We're proposing, 2 feet, 2.3 feet, a little extra. Doug mentioned that sometimes the contractors don't do their good job of grading, so, we raise it up a little. And also, wanted to show, the location, for the water and sewer enclosure. Like the handout, what we did is, since our last meeting, we're progressing on the final plans and the big sectional copies.
So through here.
Yes. Oh, here's the garage. This is the area selected for the water and sewer risers to come in. But insulated enclosure, the overall dimension is 3 feet by 4 feet. So, the water will be sleeved, and in this chase will be both the water and sewer, which will rise. Will be from the gravel garage floor into the finished living space of the first floor above. The propane tanks, just showing the detail of its location and where they are to be located. Where we actually located them was, this is the first floor. It's actually under these stairs in a landing right here. So what's being proposed is for 2 propane tanks sitting on a 3-foot by 5-foot concrete pad, 8 inches in thickness. And again, that's under the proposed deck, actually right in this area, under these stairs and the landing. So it's tucked underneath. We did meet with the ZBA, everything went fine. They basically had 3 items that they wanted addressed, one of which was to redo the application, which we have done and submitted today. There were, because of progressing in the plans, there were a few changes in like the floor area ratio and so forth. And the other is to, there's a question as far as like the building height. And the question was whether or not the roof over the stairwell was considered as the roof, or should be factored into the building height. And this is like a parapet wall. It was our initial understanding that it was just a parapet wall, which we meet, and not this little roof over this. We have we were working with Sam in the ZBA to make a determination, but what we've done is actually, to take care of any issues, with this. Basically what we did is, we haven't made this revision yet, we're just waiting, we're waiting approval from Sam and the ZBA to make sure this is okay before finalizing the plans. But we're proposing eliminating this, little gable roof. We're just gonna do like, just over this section of the front stairwell, is just gonna be a curved roof, which basically, in doing that, we're adjusting our roof height, down, so we're eliminating this roof up here, we're converting it to the small curved roof, so we're under the, so we meet the requirements for the building height, so that, should take care of, the concern of the building height. And the only other item they mentioned was, we were concerned about it was originally termed like a roof access room of 68 square feet that does not become habitable space. We did some research in looking at the ZBA's decision of approval for a prior project. Basically, it's pretty much the same setup, 2.5, 2 stories, garage on the roof access. They labeled their area, they have landing, so we're changing, instead of roof access, 60 square feet, we're relabeling it to that of the previously approved plan by the ZBA, landing, parentheses, 67 square feet, not a habitable room. So hopefully that'll suffice, the concerns of the ZBA. So I believe, modification, to the roof and that labeling, that hopefully they'll take care of it, like ZBA's, questions. So, I think we're at a point that, we have addressed the commission's concerns and, open to any questions.
Brian, I had one other thing that came up. What are these?
Pilings, footings
Footings, meaning
to support the stairs.
Sonotubes?
Yes,
if you can put a sonotube in without digging a 4-foot crater,
right,
you can use them. But the department stopped those down there some time ago,
Mhm.
especially if you have to put a spread footing at the bottom. Because if you dig those down 4 feet, they're gonna be 8 feet across the top, and it's gonna look like bomb craters through there.
right. I forget the name of it, we could do, have margin with it, the casing, if anything. I forget the name of it.
And the other thing that they're doing down there, a lot of them, is they're taking and they're using steel for their foundation.
Right,
And then lots of times these guys will have cutoffs, and they'll do a short cutoff piling for these applications here.
right,
So you might talk to him about that. It might
Okay.
even be a little cheaper while he's on site to have him vibrate those in.
sure. So basically,
So if you can get those in there without excavation, so if you
Yeah.
don't have a big, 45-degree crater in there, great, you can use them. If not, then you should have your piling, whoever you're hiring to put your pilings in, put those in for you.
yeah, we're gonna be meeting with Ed Boyle, so, like you said, the cutoffs, whatever, there aren't that many.
No, there aren't too many of them.
8 of them, so we can do that, or, just acknowledge the commission's concern that no excavation will be done for the footings, that'll be, either board and sleeves or, steel piling.
It could be a condition
Yeah.
if we get that
Sure,
far.
okay.
We've seen this a few times. That's the only thing I had on this particular drawing. Are there any other questions for the board? Go ahead, Brian, you wanna say something?
It's a mistake, I would say. Next question. But I just wanted to take note on the, there's a couple copies of the existing and proposed site conditions, and, well, there are 2 items being, the lot coverage,
Mhm.
is reflected a little, and the, what's that, the building height,
Building
as
height.
I said,
Yeah.
which are both conforming. However, just wanted to add, as you mentioned, we had Japanese pines.
Yep.
Put in, and I'd like to add similar, like cedar, et cetera.
That's fine. Yeah,
That's
that's
okay?
fine. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
'cause I'm thinking, suggesting, we've been looking around, like, a lot of cedars, nothing more cedars than Japanese pines.
Yeah. Good, okay. No, that's not an issue. Any other comments or questions? Are there any abutters here? Would anyone like to speak on this project? If there are no more concerns with the board, I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion on the project.
Motion to approve with some conditions which we need to list.
Do I have a second? All those in favor? Aye. Discussion?
So I think, was there anything other than, foundation for this deck stairs?
No, I didn't have anything else. He's left this completely open. He's up at 28 inches. He's left a little extra space under there. His only other touchdowns are inside here. He's got his, the opening is right. I'm glad we've had some questions about those little round pads, so I don't have any heartburn about this larger pad here.
So they have to be secured anyway.
Yes, they should be cabled to whatever is closest to them, whether there's a piling there or,
You referred to the propane tank?
yes.
Yeah, well, actually, they'll be sitting above the base flood elevation, but, you know, you can still change, you know.
Yeah, they
and
probably should be, because
Right.
even if they're above base flood, it doesn't mean they would stay that way in an event, so,
Right, yeah, 500 year.
yeah, yeah. Anything else?
Thank you very much, we appreciate, you know, your time,
Thank you,
involvement.
enjoy it.
Do you wanna keep this full?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, I wouldn't like a full-size set.
And, you know, at this point, we're just gonna proceed with, I'm not sure, I have to speak with Susan Noyes about, you know, making these changes for the ZBA, but, would we, modify the plans for the roof and that labeling, I'll drop off, doing a full size, 1, 2 sets, or?
No, I can understand that roof pretty
Sure.
easy, Brian, if
Okay.
you wanna just drop off a small set of that.
Sure.
I understand why you're doing it, why you
Yeah.
have to do it, so, it doesn't really affect us at all, there's no ground contact to it, so. Thank you.
Again, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
No, leave that, Brian.
I'm sorry, okay. Yeah, I'll take it.
You really can't have that. Let me just-
That's very cheap.
Is that?
Yeah, I am. It's very small. Did I say? Oh, very cool. We can go with both of them.
There's a competition going
Oh,
on.
it would be lost on me.
Looks like it did.
Instead of this one.
Exactly. Knock the pin down the end.
Don't have hand or both in school. He looked at me and he's like, what? I can talk it.
We have a continued notice of intent to replace the existing single-family home from Charles and Diane Papalato at 6 Riverfront.
Nice. Hopefully you'll have documents and that's, Who's first, who's ever?
Yeah.
Nice. That's awesome. That's fantastic. Happy days.
Okay, good evening. Tom Hughes with Hughes Environmental Consulting here with Charles Pallardo. As you may recall, there were some questions at our last hearing about some issues with regards to some of the methodologies with respect to the top of the bank, as well as in particular these stairs and the wall along here. And then there was a mathematical issue of getting total impacts. We were counting some degraded stuff, which we We aren't now, and we're down below 5,000 square feet for riverfront. Our number is now 4,971 square feet. What we did is we included some additional vegetation, and we also took the home, we shortened the mudroom, and we shortened the garage each by a foot and squeezed it down. So the total impact of that basically reduced our overall impact below 5,000. We have some notes about rebuild the embed wooden path with granite embed steps. We also have a note about replacing the existing wood curb in kind, horizontal replace with stone masonry wall more than the existing wood curb, and then remove the curb. So basically, you're going to use the curb as a erosion control, as we talked about. So we've added those notes. We've pulled it back just a touch.
We also, last time we met, we were talking about moving the foundation line back on this wall 2 feet. We ended up moving everything back 2 feet, so the entire house is.
Okay.
And you guys had asked for, to take the, rainwater and move it from the front of the house to the rear of the house, so we put a note to add gutters and downspouts too.
So I think we've addressed all the concerns the commission had expressed at the meeting. Happy to hear any questions or any further concerns, and hopefully we'll get some improvement.
I don't think I have any further concerns. We discussed them, and everything we discussed you reacted to, so. This didn't change.
I have some questions or comments. Just I did go out and take a look around, knocked on the door, nobody was home. So when you come in and you try to walk around this way, which is really when you look at it, you know, coming around on this side, the downriver side, you know, it's pretty tough walking. You know, it's close to the edge. And I'm just sort of wondering, you know, there was a step down here and there's a step down. Is this still a walkout?
This will be a walkout here.
Yeah.
I didn't bring the sections of the house. I could pull them up on my computer, but there's a walkout here. The main thoroughfare down to the dock will be this existing set of stairs. And these, I don't know if you got a chance to come around this side of the house, these are all old 4x4 embeds, and those would be replaced.
You know, one of the things that just occurred to me was you could just make some stairs, build some stairs. You got a wood wall here, not necessarily have to have any of that. I mean, I'm not sure it's a big deal, but it just seemed kind of like an odd setup to me with this walkout, which leads to this, the need to have this, you know, sort of excavated out area. I mean, none of it may make any difference, but it was kind of interesting to look at it in person.
Yeah, I think that the thing with that low area is it's an existing condition, and it'd be kind of a tough fix to undo it from its prior thing. It'd be a lot more work right there, and then getting it, you know, essentially to heal that, you'd end up having to fill it in and then stabilize it. I think what we've chosen to do is design with it because it's existing. If, you know, if we need more stairs, well, I guess we do have 29 square feet to play with. So we could look at something like that. But I think what we're trying to do is just make use of the existing impacts as much as possible.
Would the change make it environmentally better, Dan, or just flow?
No, it just
flow
seemed,
better.
it just seemed kind of odd, you know, to have this depression, which leads to this retaining wall. Yeah, I don't know when it occurred, but it.
A long time ago.
I don't remember it either, so.
Yeah, the original was 1950, I think, the original structure. So it was probably part of that, yeah. So this thing's been there for a long time.
So you're gonna have a step down here, keystone walkway, another step down here. Is it 1 or 2 steps?
Might be 2 steps there.
I think so. Yeah, and just observations.
Yeah, it's a funky flow to it, definitely. And right now, it doesn't necessarily feel all that safe in the current spot.
Yeah, I'm a little, I'm old and I'm a little shaky on my feet. I had to step carefully.
Yeah.
Some of the steps that are there are just sort of round rocks and. All right,
I don't think any of us are getting any younger. So it's,
Would anyone else like to comment on the plan? Are there any abutters here? Would anyone like to speak on the project?
Do you need any type of erosion control besides leaving the existing wall? That's my only question.
Probably to the upriver side.
yeah, we do show it, you know, because it's hard not to show the road.
It's in gold.
Yeah.
Well, it's in gold on here.
Right.
Maybe you can yeah, it's
I
in
got
gold on
one now,
there.
what's that? Yep, gotcha.
We took it around the boundary.
Yep, thank you, that's perfect, I disagree with that.
Right, and then what I would just, you know, encourage any contractors working on the site is obviously, when you're working on it, after you set that up, if there are any spots where after a rainstorm, you see stuff is going on, you put check dams or whatever up in the stream to keep that. You've got a lot of construction experience, so.
A different scale of construction, but yeah, we'll be very attentive to the erosion control approach, with the builder, which we haven't selected one yet. And then maintaining that through the entire course of construction, so the landscaping is complete and everything is fortified and stable.
Do you think it'd be worth doing like a doubling up of erosion control where we've got the rebuild stair, just stone and masonry, replace wood curb with stone and masonry, like active activity right flush with where the gold line is?
You know, something I'd have to take a look in the field to see if that would be a good idea. I know that walkway sticks up. This walkway is, what's that, about a couple of feet there?
Yeah.
So I don't think you go over it, but there, maybe.
Yeah, bear in mind that just because it's hard to see, so this perimeter right here is about a 3-foot knee wall of 4x6 construction. So we talked about this last time. The idea was to put erosion perimeter on the outside of that, but leave that in place while we construct the new wall inside of it as a double barrier, if you will. And then once the new wall's done, stabilized, we'd then remove the old wall, so you don't, it'll look much better from the riverside.
And one thing I'll point out, on sites like this, doubling up erosion control in that location really doesn't do anything. Either that's gonna work, or it's gonna get overwhelmed by a lot of fast-moving water heading towards it from the construction site. So the way you prevent a problem is by thinking as you build and putting in stuff upstream from that to minimize the loading on that. And I think that's what we were talking about.
I don't want you killing the top of the bacon either.
No,
You know.
no. It's good to just, you get that erosion control in place, and that way it shouldn't get a lot of heavy load. And if it is getting heavy load, that means something needs to happen.
You gotta do something else.
Further in. Maybe even a temporary sedimentation basis somewhere that might hold water. But, we can figure that out during construction, kind of on the fly.
It was a good thought, Brian. You brought on some conversations.
A couple of questions related to this area here where the pea stone walkway is. That's actually a pretty good slope now, is it not? I mean, the foundation wall, kind of like,
You mean from looking at the house from right to left?
if you were looking this way, this rock wall is quite a bit below the foundation line. It just seemed like that's tech.
It is, yeah, there's a
So
little
how are
bit
you
of something.
gonna make a better walkway than what's there without doing some?
Yeah, so the way that the house is currently used, this pea stone in place now, that access way To be completely honest, my kids run down there to grab the lobster traps, that kind of stuff. It's not the primary mode of getting to the riverside house. This is really the primary mode down to this dock, as well as we have an existing entryway in the there's actually a basement in this existing house. So there's an existing door out there. So this is not used as a primary, means to go from one side to the other.
I think when I looked at it, it just seemed like you're gonna change this foundation wall, that you'd probably grade that flat, so it wasn't some side slope.
And we have an opportunity now where that entire foundation is coming back 2 feet from existing. So we have that ability to safe that out essentially.
Yeah, the backfilling in the old foundation wall gives you an opportunity to make a flat area. And then just taper it into that.
So the roof line is this ridge here, or how does that work?
I provided in the original filing the architectural cross sections. I think we're actually,
This helps to give you a
and so
sense
they
of
pitch,
it.
part of it pitches towards the water, which is why we proposed the gutters to bring the water back.
Detail is in there. I was gonna ask about the redirecting the stormwater.
Yeah, so there's a note, and the architect is aware of it, and they're working on exactly how to effectuate that, but.
What I'm thinking about here is just, can you access with ladders everything you have to get to, or do you need to? It just looks like if you had to ladder up to the second floor here, you may not have enough width.
Yeah, you probably, I would think in that section, you probably, if you need to work on that side, if you need to get to any height, you use staging, I would think.
You have to
Because
put pump jacks.
yeah, you've got,
Because there won't be anything allowed outside your.
right,
your top of
and you
bank.
got that 2 feet of the old foundation, and then a little bit, so you probably got 3 feet off there, so if you need pump jacks, staging, you'd be able to work with it. I wouldn't put ladders down, or else you'd need like an 80-foot ladder and put it down the bottom of your slope.
Yeah, I mean, it makes it difficult, because it is so close.
Yeah.
Steep bank.
It was a challenging site all around, to get it designed and actually fit in the site.
I guess I'm.
You good? Yeah. Anybody else? We'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion on the project.
I would move to approve the plan as presented tonight.
Second? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Conditions. Banking protection, nothing outside of top of bank.
I think you might wanna give yourself some room for that conversation about the on-the-fly detention basins. Cause otherwise, you might have to do more paperwork later.
Might I suggest that if you said that in addition to the erosion control shown on the plan, the contractor shall employ best management practices for controlling sediment on site.
It's pretty much generic too.
Right.
A lot of that's written in there. Does the board have any concerns about the replacement in the ground of the granite on this side? Any special conditions for that rehab over there?
What do you mean?
We talked about it. Well, okay.
I mean, I've seen pretty successful, wood filled with gravel, places where I thought it was not gonna last. But you have to have sides, maybe have to 6x6 here, 6x6 here, lay the next step on it, and it seems to, contains the fill. I don't know what plan you have for granite. If it's granite, all the width of the steps will be granite?
It would be the width of the step is granite and inset, more or less how it's set up.
You don't have a picture of that, do you?
I have a picture of, that's actually in the upper corner of,
Yeah, we had a picture.
yes, it's, sorry. This side. It is visible right here, but it's just barely visible.
Yeah, it's really, so,
But
I might be able to see a little bit here.
I have pictures of one similar in your report done with granite, which if I can see if I can pull that up. But when you go over.
Yeah, so it is, it's located, you can barely see it, but it runs right from this point down. And it's, right now it's 6 by 6, I think they probably used railroad ties. Dug out what, essentially a foundation for it, put the railroad tie in place, and then drove rebar stakes in to hold that in place. So that's all rotting and decaying. The idea was to remove the railroad ties and put in pieces of granite in place. Where those would be secured similarly with rebar or something, to keep them from moving. It did essentially be a step, and then I suppose what we could do is granite down as well. I don't know that that's necessary, but it would become a little bit more monolithic at that point.
In your report, and I can't, the cell signal's too weak in here to figure out which photo it is. There was one that was very similar, and what they did is they inset the steps and basically used big steps and one just overlaid onto the next, and it's inset in, and once they were in, I was really worried about erosion when that went in, but it ended up really being much more stable than I thought, and the water that does get directed just ends up on the granite and just flows down that. So I think having some stone or something at the very bottom so that any water that goes down just doesn't flow over the bank for that minimal amount, but it's not like you can have a torrent going down there.
I'm just trying to think that through. Now, if that's not much of a pitch, I know in here, say, for instance, that's not a huge pitch. I know that the pitch down the bank is probably greater. You can see down the bank in here, it's probably a little greater. But if you start laying these in here and you start doing a slab on top of a slab, you're gonna have some big pieces of granite to get that back to your next slab where your next slab comes down. You're not gonna, I doubt it, at 8 by 11, when you start stacking those up, they're gonna be too steep. They're gonna climb before you're ready to climb, and I don't know how you're gonna deal with that.
Yeah, so if you look, here's the topo for that. You can see the real dense contours here, and they definitely are more spread out. It's not as steep a banking here.
But that's all relative, you're right, it's not
Right.
as steep a bank, but it's still.
What's the 10 scale? So it's a 10 scale, so we're looking at just steeper than 3 to 1, if I'm reading that right. That was looking
Not
like
quite a 2 to 1.
Yeah, it looks like 2.5, a quarter inch between the contours here, and it's running right across them. So I think, in fact, it might even be 3 to 1 right in here, but up in that area, it might approach 2 to 1.
I think the contractor should approach the commission prior to that portion of the project with his methodology, how he plans on doing it, so we know from him.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, we got a landscaper that's gonna come in and design that. We can bring the landscaping plan for that in.
Yeah.
And give you thoughts on that
Yeah, we can work together on that, and I mean, I don't think that there's any more process needed, that's up to the board, but I can't see how, a reason to bring you back in here for process, but certainly to kind of vet that and make sure that
So
everybody's comfortable with it.
just submit for review and approval.
Yes.
A more detailed plan for the stairway and methodology.
Yes.
Okay. That sounds good.
All right, where were we? We voted.
There's 2 of sheet 2, 1 of sheet 1, and then take one of the other sheet 1s there. And there's a full sign.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Take care.
Yeah.
Thank you. Goes in there, that's this file.
It's off.
It's an old dog, because it's got all those slip numbers on it and stuff. Somebody tied it up in a good spot, so it won't jam up the dam. Yeah. It's just weird that it came down. Yeah.
We have a request for a determination of applicability to resurface the existing parking areas with crushed asphalt from Charlotte Comparone and Bruce Folsom at 81 High Road, 181 High Road, excuse me. Anybody here to represent them? No? Then it would be my recommendation that we continue the 181 High Road hearing to the January 21st date.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye, any opposed? We have a request for determination of applicability to create a temporary wetland crossing for soil testing from John Colantoni at 108 Main Street and off Main Street. There's two lots there, there's a big lot behind the first one.
Good evening.
Good evening, how are you?
Happy New Year.
Same to you.
Happy new decade.
Yeah, really.
I'm Bill Manuel from Wetlands and Land Management, John Colantoni. And this is a lot we actually purchased from the town. Before the town sold it, they actually did some soil testing to explore what they had out here. I don't think there's a benefit of flagging the wetlands before you did that, but in any case, I had flagged the wetlands. I believe it's in the process of being survey located. Doug and I have already walked this line, and we've agreed on the wetland boundary. We're just trying, you're gonna see us shortly with an ANRAD to verify that wetland boundary, but in the meantime, we'd like to do some soil testing out there. And the configuration of the wetlands is shown approximately on this sketch, but we are going to have to jump over a little ditch and a very flat area of wetlands, and then cross over again on the high side of this little wetland system to do some testing on the other side here. This is Main Street out here, this is the little neck off of Main Street, and this is the property that's looking to be developed. So it's perfect time of year. If somebody said to me back in June, hey, you know, this is what we'd like to do, cross the wetlands, to do soil testing, I would have said, can you wait till January? And here we are, coincidentally or fortunately. The first crossing would be exactly where the tester for the town did the crossing. And there's a little ditch and a very flat area of wetlands, fairly on the sort of the drier side. But what they did is they actually, looks like they put down sheets of plywood to cross that ditch, and they left them there. So we can certainly utilize those sheets of plywood and do the same thing. We would have a little tracked excavator or a mini with rubber tracks. I'm not sure which machine yet, but anyway, the weight is distributed over a larger ground surface. It does not tend to rut up the ground surface. It tends to just sort of track right over it. We would do one pass in, one pass to the other side here, and then back out. As far as the soil testing itself, that's digging a pit, clogging the soils, and then get to water table, doing percolation testing, and then filling the holes back in. So we'd like to do this as quickly as we can with the determination from the board, and we don't expect to cut any trees or anything like that. We might cut a shrub or something like that so that the excavator doesn't get it jammed up underneath, but that would be the extent of it. We use plywood if we have to. If the ground is firm enough, we just walk right in and walk right back out.
Bill, I think the only thing that I would like from your side is just to take what you just said and either either put it down on the map or put it down in a narrative, because this really says nothing. It doesn't show us where you're going in, it doesn't show us, it just says to go and do some soil testing, that's all. So if we just map out the route, just show us what you just said on paper, that would be helpful, that's all.
Sure.
Any other questions from the board or concerns?
Have you been out to that particular ditch? Do you know this ditch well?
Oh, I do. I've been out there a couple of times. Bill and I spent, I don't know, maybe an hour and a half out there one day, walking around, reviewing the line. I was out there with the town prior to the sale, so yeah, I'm fairly familiar with the property now.
Just cause I was out running this morning, you know, and it's real slippy, it's real muddy, even on the trail.
Oh,
You know,
I-
like the snow melt is just here, and in terms of when to, you know, cross a, you know, wetland, I'd say maybe not a great, like, now it'll be a weather thing. But if this is, you know, more of a ditch than a, like, full-on land crossing, you know, we might wanna consider, just saying, you know, wait for snow, or wait for a freeze, or wait for, you know, you get the idea. But, you know, the ditch recommended.
Well, in the woods like that too, you're not gonna have as much frost in the ground either, so it is softer in there than it would be in your front yard, so. We get that, yeah. Anything else? Would anyone like to comment on this project? I'll close the public. Tony, yes, sir.
The entry road that goes into that back lot, are they gonna put a culvert in there to, cause that comes off of Main Street, that's quite a ditch in there just to get a machine in there. I know the town had a hard time getting a machine in through there. You know, if they're gonna put it, cause that's a drainage ditch for Main Street where it drops in, and if they were gonna build that up too.
For the testing, you don't propose anything like that, do you?
Do anything like that?
We haven't had any problem getting in and out of there.
Okay. No, I guess it's a no for now, Tony.
Just wondering.
Yep.
Yep.
Anybody else like to comment? All right, I will close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Move to issue a negative determination, subject to having the others.
Getting the list, the narrative, well, just the map, as long as it's mapped out, that's fine with me.
You just want the route of.
Show a proposed route in, yes. Yeah. And I know it's gonna vary a little bit as you get in there, Bill,
Right.
because we talked, we looked at it, there's micro topography everywhere in there, so, yeah, no, I realize that. Okay, do I have a second? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you. Terrific.
Thank you very much. We have a request for determination of applicability to replace multiple ground contact openings with like materials from John DiMartino at 31 Southern Boulevard.
Good evening,
Hi,
Mr.
Bill.
Chairman. Happy New Year,
Same to you.
committee members. My name is Bill Barrett, and I'm here representing John. So what we've got here is a single-family home on the beach at 31 Southern Boulevard. John DiMartino is a new owner of this property. He has been trying to get it fixed up a little bit, and in the process of doing that, he came across some rotted 2x4s and still on the third level or third grade basement level of the house. He asked me to do a permitting for it, I applied for a permit, and actually asked him to go ahead with it. To be perfectly honest with you, I didn't think it would be a problem. Doug put a stop to the project, which I found out a couple weeks later, and we have since stopped the operation and are waiting to come before you guys to get approval to do that. Basically what you've got here is some rotted, this is the area in front of the house. It's a little bit of a bump out. It used to be a porch, I imagine. They filled it in with KD stock. The grade is it's very wet there. So that in combination with not getting any air, it was rotted out pretty well. On the outside of the building is another area. Here's a little bit of a rot you can see here as well. On the side of the building, you've got 2 garage doors that were filled in with 2x4s as well. At some point in time, probably 20, 25 years ago. Same issue there, and that's right in the alleyway between the 2 houses, so a lot of the sand comes in there, fills up on the driveway side, and now it's created sort of towards the house. So you get significant water on that side of the house. Same thing is happening there. What he's proposing to do is just take the 2x4s that are there now, replace them with pressure treated stock, and put it all back together on the side, and it'll look very similar to what it is today, except for a better material.
Compliant ground contact material.
Correct. And 2x6 right now, 2x4s, which shouldn't be on the 3rd floor level, so I'm gonna put 2x6 in there. And insulated as well, and take the opportunity to stick. So that was about it for this one.
Any questions from the board? I don't have any questions for the applicant.
What was that comment about the sand piling up today?
Yeah, well, it's in between houses, so the sand comes off the beach and it piles up in that driveway there. He's considering doing a different filing, notice of intent to bring that back to its original grade. But at this point in time, he's not asking to do that, he just wants to get the proper materials under the house so he doesn't have any degradation of what's above that.
Just because, you know, there's always conversations about sand moving and how that gets handled, that's all. Someone that you didn't pick up on that, you didn't see anything there with.
Well, there's not gonna be a great deal of sand movement to this. There'll be a little bit of pulling it away from the foundation, but I think the sand movement that he's talking about is more of an accretion issue that the applicant perceives as a problem. But that's a different subject.
They keep filling in the driveway. You know, you put stone down and it fills up. And, I mean, he's a new owner, so he's kind of assuming what happened, but he dug a hole in the driveway and he sees like layers of rock and sand and rock and sand. And
that's called accretion.
And yeah, it's called accretion, right? So yeah. This particular house used to have about a 14-foot drop from the top of his wall in front of the house to the beach. Now it has about 4 feet average, 4 or 5 feet average. So there's been quite a bit of accretion on that end of the beach.
Yeah, I know.
It goes straight now, who knows how long that's gonna last. So anyway, he'd just like to repair, at this point, he wants to repair what he's got and, you know, get the right materials in place so he doesn't have a degradation of the materials above.
One little obvious hint to him, Bill.
Yeah.
That sand that's such a problem in his driveway, if he stopped it in the front yard, he'd not only have protection against storm damage, but he wouldn't have it in his driveway.
Funny you should say that, because I had to put 2 rows of fencing right at the end.
It's funny how that works.
Right at the top of the rock wall and 4 feet back.
Yeah, okay, good, I'm glad you're thinking. Any comments or questions? Are there any abutters here? Would anyone like to speak on this project? I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Bill.
Come up to the next one, so I'll just hang in.
Yeah, stay right here.
Jennifer, they only sent me 1 cut sheet.
I saw.
You know, if I need to take it.
We have a request for determination of applicability to make repairs to the existing foundation and to install a generator from Barry Gale at 35 Southern Boulevard. Hello?
I'm still Bill Barrett, I'm representing Barry Gale. This is the lot in question here, it's 2 houses down from the last one we talked about. This house also, these people just bought the property about 3 months ago, I think.
Okay, because I was gonna say, who's Barry Gale? Okay.
Yeah, it used to be owned by the Contis, and before that, Sullivan, something like that. Anyway, they, upon purchasing the property, they found some cracking in the foundation. Both on the beach side of the house, and there's a bay window on the north side of the property that is sinking because it wasn't properly framed. So, what we're proposing, is to, bring in a contractor called Geotech, who will come in and he will drive pipe and underpin the foundation, pull it back up to where it belongs. And this is on the beach side, there's gonna be 6 room planted along that side. Here's a little sketch just so you can see, the 6 along this deck will be removed and replaced when we're done. And here's the bay window on the side, we propose is putting 3 heel coils on that side and pick that thing back up again where it belongs. And those would then support it as opposed to the joist system that's underneath, which is inadequate for supporting the bay window. The way in and out of this thing is pretty barren soil. There's some pictures there, if you don't have them, I can give you a copy of them. The soil is barren going in all the way to the beach side as well as the area where the bay window is. And we are proposing going in that one time, driving our hill coils, doing our underpinning, and then coming out the same direction, fixing everything on our way out. It's pretty much all sand now. There's very little vegetation at all. So we don't expect to have to do any replications of any plants. That's actually
Just to be clear, coming down this side, going all the way around.
correct. Right down the driveways.
Way back there.
Driveway stops here, we're going in right here. Here's the bay window on this side.
Yep, okay. Just wanted to-
So a little bit of a wall right here, you can't see very well there on the plan, but it's a small wall about this high that he's just gonna plank down off of and do his work and get out of there.
If you remember, Bill was here some months ago, and he was here on the other business to ask the board if he could proceed with a request for determination. And that night, we came to consensus that we would allow him to go forward with an RDA.
Second part of this equation is the generator. Along the right-hand side of the house, the contractor is scheduled to install a generator there. There's the existing platform that is 30 inches by 50 inches, but it's too close to the house. So we want to just cantilever another foot extension on that existing platform and put our generator on that platform.
Would the generator be elevated?
It'd be elevated. It's on an existing platform. I think there's a picture in there somewhere.
Show the gas.
This gives you an idea of the underpinning.
So how high would the generator be?
Well, it slopes pretty drastically away from the house, so it's gonna be maybe 8 inches at the back of the house and probably 2 feet. At the house, 2 feet away from the house.
You're not elevated.
Elevated. Yeah. 2 feet max, 8 inches in the back, because it slopes pretty drastically away from the house.
It will have to be 2 feet minimum from closest point to closest point for conservation, and then it will have to be above flood for building. So it probably is there. I don't know what, it's probably elevation 16 or something in here. I don't know where that relates to this house, but that's gonna be something else. You'll
Definitely
have to-
well above flood.
I think so too. That would be the 2 pieces that would push you up in the air, one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Bill, the other observation I could make here, and I understand why this guy wouldn't want a big dune built up in front of his house, but if he plants grass like this guy right here, look what happens. This guy's 4 feet higher than he is. You know what I mean? Vegetation in here would trap that sand that's then blowing all the way by his house and getting in his driveway. It's another tool that a really simple tool that he could use to build that front dune system, for it, and it's for his benefit.
Yeah, and there's no doubt that he's gonna be doing some additional landscaping here, but he obviously wants to get this done first.
Yep, no, I understand
We
that.
should have done one filing, but, he really isn't anxious to get this done, he's from Savannah, Georgia. He's in a hurry, get that foundation fixed. So the generator is not so much of an emergency, but he'd like to get that done as well. Doesn't want to be about power.
Any comments or questions from the board relative to the installation of the helicals?
Not so much there, I'm just so worried about the generator platform. Is that compliant with what we would ask on a new application?
We would want well, it depends on the house, but like I said, it's gonna be a minimum of 2 feet from closest point to the closest point of sand, but yes, we ask for a tabletop with a minimum of 2 feet.
We will condition, or a possible condition.
You can condition an RDA, or I can condition an RDA. It's a little tougher
Can I
because,
just add though that many times these things are put on the ground, on a much smaller platform, but still put on the ground. And that includes in Newbury as well as Newburyport.
not if
Very
they come
common
to,
practice.
not if they come to us, Bill. It is a common practice, and we catch a lot of them, and we've actually popped a couple of them up in the air after they've poured the concrete, so it's a little painful. So maybe some do, but if they come to us, it's easy for us to say, it's much easier and compliant for us to say 2 feet above for everybody. And that way it's not 8 inches for this guy, how come this guy's at 16, how come I'm at 30, you know, it gets all over the place. So for us, it's 2 feet or above flood, whichever is higher.
As you can see from the drawings, it slopes pretty drastically from the house. So if it's 2 feet at the back, it's gonna be 4 feet at the front.
Okay.
And maintenance on those back equipment is gonna be a little bit tougher than it needs to be, I think.
I understand that, and the guy might have to bring a step stool with him, but you've got places on the island where guys are gonna need ladders to fill their propane tanks, so I don't think that we'll, put it this way, myself, I won't start waving a change in that now because I think that's such a slippery slope.
A platform.
Yeah, that it goes on a platform, and it's elevated 2 feet like everything else is. Any disagreements? Does the board want to let that on the ground? You know, I'm one vote, so everybody has
So
an
the same
opinion.
issue is the current platform is 8 inches at the closest point.
I didn't measure it, but it looks like it's about 8 inches in the back and maybe 2 feet in the front.
So the platform might have to come up.
This is after a snowstorm, so you can't see that one.
Yeah, come on.
Well, in that case, I'd like to apply for, I'd like to change the permit and build a new platform, because it doesn't make sense to build on top of what's there.
All right. Do you want to just in the narrative modify that?
Do you just want to condition it to do what you just said instead of changing
Well, we can condition it, but there's no order of conditions. This is an RDA, so it's going to go out as a negative determination with some conditions on it. So I think it's much better if it's in his writing in the narrative, and then we refer this document, our determination refers to that, than us to put it in the determination.
6 1, half does the other, whatever.
I don't think I don't have a written narrative here.
Bill?
What was on there.
It can be contingent upon you turning in, yeah, that doesn't have to be tonight, don't worry about it.
Okay.
I think the board's in agreement that it's gonna go up 2 feet like they all do, and we'll leave it at that.
All right.
Where are we with this thing?
We got a motion for second.
We're in discussion.
I don't have the motions. No, we didn't have.
Oh, we didn't, I apologize.
That's not my business.
That's okay, it's easy to throw us off. You made a motion?
I guess I did, it's a long time.
That was a long time ago, okay. Wow, this is getting to be a shaky group. Yeah, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor? Aye, any opposed? Contingent upon getting a drawing, a new generator platform drawing.
Showing
Drawing or just narrative saying it will be.
Well, a narrative's
50 feet
fine,
above
Bill,
ground.
yeah, a narrative,
2
something,
feet from the bottom to ground,
Or the point
or
goes.
2 feet over flood
or
elevation.
above flood elevation, yeah. Doesn't have to be 2 feet because it's not living space, it has to be at or above if it's a generator. If
The
it's
generator itself or the platform?
the generator itself, the platform that you'd stand on needs to be at or above, and then the generator sits on that.
Okay, so the
When it
frame
comes to
number
flood.
below it.
Yeah, so if you're at elevation 13 on the backside and you're putting a new heating system in the basement, that heating system has to be elevated to at least the 13th floor. Because you can't have any mechanical subject
Yeah,
to
so I'm
flood.
right about it.
Yeah.
Just how it related to generators and flood.
Yeah, well, and there's a difference between the generator and living space.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Have a good night.
Bill's copy.
How's now?
That was quick.
I'm gonna go down to the bottom to other business. Joseph and Meredith Verdone of 19 Dartmouth Way are here to discuss the installation of a privacy fence where the bottom 2 feet is 50% open and the top 4 feet is of privacy. Hello?
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Meredith.
Hi, how are you folks?
We were on the docket for December, but it was shoot.
Yeah, you did.
Submitted a narrative, back then. You have been in touch with Agawam Fence,
Yes.
regarding this project. And Agawam had suggested a type of fence that, we're new to there, so I don't know what is ideal, but the type of fence that was possibly could be within the guidelines, compliant. And looking for your feedback, so I've submitted, do you need copies of these? I have other copies.
Yes, if you could just pass them down to the center of the board so they can take a look at what we're talking about.
That's the basic schematic of. So the idea is a 6-foot fence with 2 feet above being 50% air, so that there's airflow, so that the sand can move through and winds and whatnot. And I've contacted all of my neighbors, Phil on the one side, has anybody visited the site?
Yeah.
You've seen it, okay, so there's some 6x6 posts in place. We're gonna use those, he's happy to, allow us to use those posts, which is great.
Yeah.
And then there's, we've got a bit of an encroachment issue behind me, and I may wait to put the fence in to go through there's an appeal that's pending with regards to the next year coming up at the 16th. They're looking to put 2 stories on their house, I just wanna hear that out.
Gotcha.
Spoken with them, they had no issues with putting the fence, along their property line, and similarly, my neighbors to the right, it's primarily a backyard fence. I will enclose it on the eastern side with the gate. So, what do you guys think?
Any comments on the fence? To me, this is a compliant design. This is how we finish off our homes, so.
Question for you.
Yes.
Once the fence is up, and 5 years down the road, and that gets filled with sand.
Too bad.
That's it.
That's it. You're not gonna move the sand. You might try to pull the fence out of it if you're lucky. But no, that's a good point, and I usually try and point that out. If you put this fence up and it creates a situation where it acts like a snow fence and it creates a snow drift or a sand drift, that sand drift will stay in place. You're not allowed to move it unless it's endangering an egress or something like that, or if it's filling your driveway, of course. We allow people to clean up, but if this is just creating a dune someplace in your yard that appears to be an inopportune place, it is what it is.
Do you anticipate that, or is it nature makes that call?
That's a good question.
You saw the site, I don't know anything.
Well, yeah, but you never know what the wind currents are gonna be,
Yeah.
you never know what direction they're gonna come from, you don't know what the change just in putting that fence up will mean
Sure.
for the air currents in the neighborhood, so it's hard to tell, but if it does, that's the way it goes.
And so if it does pile up, and let's just say it obstructs 1 foot, you're saying I shouldn't touch it, or
You
just
shouldn't
leave it
touch
as it is?
You're
or-
gonna leave it as is at
Is
that
there
point.
anything, so they're just let it, okay.
Yep, you're just gonna let it go. It's the same as a house. The houses are the same way. They have this open area at the bottom. if after it's done, if 10 years from now, things change, they get a lot of accretion and it's all of a sudden burying the house, you don't lift the house, and you don't, you just can't maintain that 2 feet, but you start out with it and I hope you keep it.
And does that apply if the dune shows up on the other property?
Well, if the dune shows up on the other property, it may be a liability issue. It may be that the homeowner comes over and says, hey, now I can't enjoy my property because you put a fence up that created a sand dune on my property, and you've impacted my property. So that would just be a civil issue between the parties. I don't think the town would get involved in it.
It's not gonna happen, don't worry.
Most contentious things so far.
Right, really.
I know.
I was gonna end this whole hearing with see you guys soon. Mileage, we will see them soon.
Big
But
projects
that's how I feel about saying
Fence is a
that.
mess, right?
We have to worry about any vegetation issues as far as where the fence is going in and getting it installed.
I don't usually make an issue of that. Is there some issue with them walking on the property and installing it? Yeah, of course there usually is, but people walk on their properties anyway, so.
Yeah, a lot of the ones we look at, this actually looks like there's more vegetation just in that backyard than most. That's the only reason I bring it up. So you've been on the site, I have not.
Do you,
Have you been there? You haven't seen it?
I have not, that's why I was asking.
Because I've kind of cut back a lot of brush on the area.
No, you haven't.
No, I haven't.
No, you haven't.
I have not cut back any brush.
You thought about it.
You thought about it, it was a tree.
Makes sense.
I think that the board, I think there's a consensus here, do I speak for everybody, that this is a compliant design. I've just tried to throw a couple of cautions out there to you, just so you're aware, that's all. You shouldn't have a problem, we don't have problems, good fences make good neighbors everywhere, even down there, so, welcome to the neighborhood, I guess.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, folks.
So that's approved as far as.
You can,
we're good
yeah,
to
go put your fence in.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
All right, folks.
Appreciate it.
We have a request for a certificate of compliance from David Ysayer, 138 Main Street, 50-263. I have no idea what the project was. I went to 138 Main Street, there were no bare soils, there was no, 263 was probably 78, just a guess, maybe not even that late. So there is no file, there is no obvious project. There is no start of the earth over there. There is no resource area that appeared to be in trouble. So it would be my recommendation that we grant the certificate of compliance to 138 Main Street.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
What happened was Borrego Solar Systems was going through, I think, and they were doing their final in there, and they found this outstanding order from ages.
So there's no sunset on one of these things.
There's no one.
There's no,
No, they're just like hanging jads.
yeah.
They just
Hang, hang, and here.
Yeah, is it a violation of the Wetlands Protection Act not to have a certificate of compliance or apply for one month before your permit expires? Absolutely. It's a violation of the act not to have either a certificate of compliance or a valid order of conditions, one or the other. Does it happen everywhere in every town? And yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and this property's probably changed hands like 4 times, with nobody actually going through the paperwork and doing it.
Sometimes that happens. Sometimes you issue the certificate and people put it in the sock drawer and they come back 5 years later and they don't have it and it's still not done. And you've got a copy of it and you come back in here, we make an original copy.
Though, that raises a question, because how did they figure that out?
How do they figure what out?
That there is an outstanding.
Because someone, when the property changes hands, the lawyer goes down and it's lien on the registry, on the deed, down at the registry of deeds. And it tells you that sometimes they don't do their jobs because sometimes they don't find it until it's passed hands 2 or 3 times.
But I'm just wondering if it might not be worth a phone call, just be like, hey, do you have the actual original? Like, did they do a good job of filing that original in like 78 or whatever, and there's actually a copy of it?
Oh, absolutely. We ask them to give us every single bit of information they can on it. Jen goes on to see what she can find. You're talking about these cases where we don't have the files?
Oh, yeah, or this one, because they figured it out, since they maybe it was information, but you actually did that part, right? You're behind the curve.
Yeah, yeah, we usually try to get as much as we can from the applicant and then do our own
They just had
homework.
a line item with like, this is outstanding, and there's no information. Anyway.
So the next one that we have is DEP number 50-1275 from Karen Shuck at 14 Forest Street. I did a site visit. The first 5 I all did on 12/17/2019 was the site visits. That was a duplex. It's actually 1416 Forest Street. It was well vegetated. It's a complete project.
Actually, so I want, it's not 1416.
It's not.
They initially thought it was 1416, but 16 is somebody else's property.
Okay.
It's 14.
It's 14. So both units have, what are they, 14 and 14A?
Yeah, 14A, 14B,
Okay.
something like that.
All right, I stand corrected then. 14 Forest Street.
Good job keeping them in line.
It's a complete project. They're done with the project, completely revegetated. Everything looked good in the backyard. And it would be my recommendation that we grant the certificate of compliance.
So move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Running out of toner.
We gotta make it go as long as we can.
I know, yeah,
We put
I like
water
it.
in it.
I like it, yeah. Saving us all money.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Trying to print everything we can on, just black.
Jen's done with us today. It's only, we haven't even started usually.
Yeah, it's a much shorter day than it usually is.
Yeah, that's actually not running out of toner, that's just cheap cartridges.
Okay.
But on the plus side, hey, rainbows. It's like having your kid put rainbow stickers all over your
I
paperwork.
was like, and who has 2 daughters here?
That's awesome.
It's beautiful. They're wonderful.
We have a request for a certificate of compliance from DEP number 50-896 from Arthur Allen at 65 Plum Island Turnpike. Oh, probably a couple of years ago, they came before us for a certificate of compliance. We gave them a partial. They did not have the vegetation done. They are all revegetated now. He's pulled his silt fence, and it would be my recommendation that we finish up this certificate of compliance and grant it.
I appreciate it, actually, listen, this is what you need, okay, great. Give me a couple of years, I'll have that sorted out. Fantastic.
Just a question on that. That was one that had like a block retaining wall,
Yes.
and it had to be lowered because it was too tall, right? Didn't they have to take a course off of it? I thought there was some.
No, I think what they did is, I can't remember how they resolved that with Sam, but they kept it below the 4 feet. It wasn't a problem for us. It was a problem of keeping it below 4 feet, so you didn't need, or maybe it was 30 inches, I don't know, to put a railing or a fence around it or something like that.
But I mean, there's no evidence of any erosion. It did look, when they took it off, there was a bit of a pitch
To the ends?
to the edge, yeah.
There's a little bit of a pitch to the ends, yeah, where
Stable.
the stuff is, but it's stable. Yeah, no, nothing's going anywhere there.
Sorry,
No, I already went out there to, I already made the recommendation.
do you have a motion?
Not yet.
I'll give you. a
All right,
motion
thank you.
To issue the certificate.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Finally let me off the hook. Getting nervous over that one. got a request for a certificate of compliance for DEP number 50-1292 from Kristen Huntress at 18 Southern Boulevard. That was a project where they redid the whole front yard, the driveway, they reconfigured the area down into the garage. To the south of the house was a big patio that they had replaced. They had the impact there before, and then there was a deck that was enlarged. It was done in compliance with their order, and it's my recommendation that we grant the certificate.
Motion, second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We have a request for a certificate of compliance for DEP number 50-1267 from Francis DeLeo at 77 Riverfront East. This was to move a pier that was encroaching on the neighbor's property and was misplaced in the right-of-way. I went down there on the 17th. They did a great job. It's a well-built, well-done pier. It would be my recommendation that we grant the certificate.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Any opposed?
How does a pier encroach?
There's he's got the back property, and there's two properties that sit out front, and evidently the back property, either from the property owner, which there was one owner that owned all the property under these homes, they either allowed him to do it and gave him a right-of-way, or the neighbors gave him a right-of-way, but he had, I think, 10 feet to put his pier in. Well, they messed up when they put it in, and they put it on the neighbor's property, and this guy recently bought it and wanted everything fixed. So they came down, permitted the change, and called me up. They're done with it now, so that's how we have it.
A year ago we were doing that? 2 months ago?
Yeah, maybe a year ago. I mean, the wood's still green, you know.
I remember.
Yeah. And the last one is we had a request for a certificate of compliance for DEP number 50-973 from William Morrison at 247 Middle Road. It was another dock. You'd love the place. The deer dance in the front yard all night. You should see the prints down there. It's a little short piece of pier. Actually, you can see it from Middle Road. If you drive up Middle Road just before you get across the marsh, you look over to your right, there's 2 piers there. This is the second one in. It comes from the second house down and around.
Yeah.
It's just a little short piece of pier. It's back from the bank and it's well done. They cantilevered it with chains, as a matter of fact. They use pipes and then they got chains bringing out over, so there's nothing in the water. And it would be my recommendation that we grant the certificate.
So moved.
All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? It's at 973 was the application, so yeah, at least a couple of years older than that.
I don't remember it.
Yeah.
Like 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
It's back
It
there.
was, sort of, we might have a different discussion about this application now.
I don't know, you know something, when I look at this thing here, this one here looks to be one of the ones that would likely be above the ACEC and not in the ACEC. He's quite high and he's up on like a lawn
I'm
section.
looking at it right now, yeah,
I think he's above it, isn't
he
he?
might be, I mean, I can't tell, but.
No, it's hard to tell, but I'll tell you, it's quite high when you're
It
there.
looks like it could be.
Yeah.
Do you want me to fill the rest of the board in as long as you?
Yes, I want you to fill the rest of the board in, and then I'm gonna toss you out of here, because we're gonna take up your business,
Okay.
okay?
Yeah. Following all the discussions we've been having about ACEC and walkways and everything else, I got in touch with one of the heads of coastal zone management, and they're the ones who are in charge of these regulations. And basically, when you boil it down, it looks like currently the only way CZM will find out that it's very clear language that there should be no new structures in the ACEC. But the only way that CZM really finds out is if it escalates to an Army Corps of Engineers pre-construction notification. Currently, all this permitting for these walkways, as long as they don't go into the actual, below mean high water, the way that the general programmatic permit is written for Massachusetts right now, which gets redone every 5 to 10 years, is that you can do it via self-verification. So you still have to put in paperwork, but it's like the lowest level of paperwork you'd have to put in into the Army Corps. Pre-construction notice is the next step up. And CZM only sees things that go to pre-construction notice. So right now, new structures can go through the ACEC and get an ACOE rubber stamp because CZM never sees it. Likewise with DEP, and I need to follow up with DEP. So the other way CZM would find out is if DEP sees it. So that's the question mark for me right now, and I have to follow up with DEP, is DEP is seeing a lot of these cases, but do they feel they can only make a comment if it's a Chapter 91 issue, which again would be the mean high water. So right now it seems like there's this little regulatory loophole that people have figured out that CZM is aware of, where they say we're going to put a permanent structure in the ACC, but everything permanent is going to stay above mean high water. So that Chapter 10, or what is it? This is Chapter 10.
Chapter 91.
No, not Chapter 91.
Oh, the 10A permit?
The 10A permit. The 10A permit
Covers the rest.
gets around people, the CZM ever getting a chance to comment and say, no, this is not permissible because it's a new structure. So while none of these things are technically permissible under various parts of state mass regulations, it doesn't seem like there's any way that they're getting caught. So I think that Doug and I thought maybe the next step was to talk to DEP and figure out if there's a way that we can make sure that DEP is noticing these things.
Or find out why they're not commenting upon them if they should be. Why don't we get any comments from them?
Yeah.
We get a comment on a mailbox, but not up here on the river, so.
Yeah, and I mean, CZM also felt that I gave them some of the example text that's been provided by applicants, and they felt that didn't reach the way we should be looking at things is that, and I can't remember all the precise wording off the top of my head because this was all stuff I did early December now, is that they felt that the justification given in applications wasn't good enough. But I think that Doug and I both felt that it was a toss-up because it gets into like interpretations of words, really, without super duper clear examples.
It's likely that they don't have a better grasp on it than we do, and that's why there's a hole there.
Yeah. Well, I think anytime we write laws, there's got to be holes. People are going to figure it out, and then either there's a reaction or there's not. I think that's kind of any regulation.
Based on what you learned, like if somebody came to us and did something like that, would we be within our powers to just say, nope, because CZM would say no to you, so we can say no to you, or is that so far outside our?
We're in 2310, and this is, sorry, right? Yes. And,
yeah, it's
and,
not.
And this is 2309.
It's not CZM that would have jurisdiction over our process. It would be DEP through their reach into the process. And they're the ones that really have, I mean, they're the ones that issue the DEP number for these projects. Right. And they actually made comments, I mean, you see comments all the time about, you know, the pier should be a little higher, the pier should be not as wide, these things here. So you're getting comments from them modifying the project, yet maybe they shouldn't be doing this, so that's what we're gonna look into.
Yeah, that's what we gotta look into, and so I guess
My
understanding where, to answer your question, my understanding of where it is that like, there is an avenue within 2310 where we could say, no, we don't think this is permissible. There's language within 2310 that basically says C-23-9. And these are the definitions of these words that we're gonna offer you, and so then it'd be a judgment call on our part, and I'll forward all these emails to the rest of the board. It'd be a judgment call on our part whether or not we thought that by the definitions given, an impact was adverse or not. So that's one avenue, but on the other avenue,
And that's a tough one too, and I wonder if that's part of their heartburn, is the fact that you're putting these things up, and you put them up in a compliant way that allows the sunshine underneath. How do they step in now and show there's an adverse impact?
Yeah, I mean, I think 23-9 is a lot clearer, where it just says, it very much says, like, here's the permit, there's like 2 or 3, like, we will give you a hall pass on this.
Dates and certain
No,
times.
it's like, no, it's purposes. It's like very purpose driven. If it's like a town landing, okay, we'll talk about it. Like, there's a few other little like permissible, but like really a private pier for your house is not a permissible end around on this. And so I think that Doug and I both thought that we really, before we start going down do we want to take a stand on our tiny little patch of dry land under 2310, let's get a better understanding of why DEP is not flagging these things when they should be. I think that was like stop one, was like, let's get a better understanding of why DEP isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing. I really think the long-term fix of this loophole is that the next time the GPs get rewritten, which I think is probably not for another 5 years.
I think it just happened.
Yeah, I think it's not for quite a while. That new structure in ACOE, or ACEC, sorry, we went to ACEs. And ACEC should be bumped over to the PCM. That's the real fix. Is bump that big. If you want to build something in ACEC, you have to go through pre-construction notification. And then CZM would see it, CZM would comment, and it would and that would nip it in the bud. That would take care of it. But until then, it just seems like I'll keep on, Doug and I thought I'll keep on talking to other agencies in the state government and get us some clarification, and then maybe at the next meeting we'll talk about it some more if people want to, and we can come to a decision about how we want it. I think also at this point, correct me if I'm wrong here, but my understanding would be that since we've permitted enough of these things, we might have a hard time with the precedent we've set down.
No, I don't think so. I don't think you never have a problem with stopping a bad practice and moving forward in a comprehensive way.
Okay.
If you waffle back and forth, yeah, now you're up for grabs.
Okay.
But no, there's no problem with doing it right and then moving forward.
Okay,
because you've got new information that nobody had before. You know, like you now are the state expert on.
Yeah, it's a recognized problem in getting into it. Yeah, I don't know why. Yeah, so anyways,
You mentioned Gloucester, yes. So
I talked to, and I'm working with the conservation agent in Gloucester a little bit and talking to them. They're not as strict as they would come off on that flyer.
I mean, if this is something that you think is worth talking about, then is this the kind of thing that we wanna like build into something else somewhere in town and just say, hey, if you're gonna do this, we wanna see it go through the process you just mentioned. And say we wanna see the pre-construction reviews as part of our own packages.
I think that's down the road. Yeah, I think, that's what we need to figure out, how we're gonna handle this. Get more information, figure out how we're gonna handle it, and then have a clear policy.
And that may be an impetus for the town to blow the dust off its estuary plan and bring it back into a harbor management plan, I should say. Estuary plan's part of it, but the harbor management plan, and then that would break this back open, because if you have a harbor management plan, you've identified these areas where you can and can't. It goes to the secretary, and then you won't have this issue.
Yeah, you have a secretary approved.
is there a harbor management plan now?
There is an estuary plan that we did with Ipswich a lot of years ago that's just been sort of collecting on the dust on the shelf, but there's not a real harbor management plan. That would take some funding, I think, to come up with a harbor management plan.
Yeah, I don't know where we get the secretary at right now. I don't any sense of that. The new secretary is a climate change person.
Mhm.
So I would imagine that salt marsh resiliency is gonna be pretty high up on the priority list.
Yeah, it seems reasonable.
Ben, if you're all set, you're probably better off to.
Whatever you want me to do. I haven't, my first one of these.
Well, you can't participate, it's an issue, it's your business, so
Yep.
the board's gonna take this up without you.
You want me in the room, out of the room?
That's up to you, you're probably better off just to go.
Okay.
Yeah, better off just to go.
Do you need
And unless you need to speak for yourself, you know, sometimes.
Do you need any more information from me before I write that?
I think.
And can I go, or?
Yeah, no, you
do I have to come back and meeting adjourned?
stay here for 1 minute. I got a call from Ben, I don't know, what was it, about a week ago, Ben?
Yeah.
And he had lost water to his house. They had come down to try and do an easy fix, and they couldn't find the leak, so it ended up being a new service to the house. So Ben called me concerned that he was certainly in the buffer zone, and they were digging a good-sized trench back to the house. So where it was an emergency, it's a water service to a home, I issued an emergency certification to justify the work, and what I'm asking for tonight is for the board to add their signatures to that emergency cert. Did you follow that? Okay. Water. Yeah, an order for water. Yeah, I felt as though that was, you know, if there's any emergency at a house, having no water is one of them, so to make someone wait weeks for that just didn't make sense. Do we have a copy of that? Okay.
Can we just do a motion to accept what you did?
Yes.
Motion to accept what you did.
All those in favor? Aye. That's here and you, so it doesn't matter. We're good.
That was pretty funny.
Yep.
Do we just motion to accept what you did? Yes. Okay, motion to accept what you did.
I think the important point.
Cut and dry.
Yeah, so what it is it's just issuance from, so the town issues it. Reason for emergency, it's a water line break to an existing home. Applicant to perform the work, it's a private contractor on the homeowner's side. If there was anything on the other side, it would have been City of Newburyport on the public side. There's a start date and an end date. They're never more than 30 days apart. And you put a work to be allowed in there, so it was to provide a new water service consisting of a copper line sheathed with PVC pipe at 13 Plumbers Lane in Newbury. And the only other thing I put down there is siltation control shall be implemented using best management practices.
Is it in PVC to protect the soft copper?
Yeah, this is the second week we got in it, and the Newburyport water guys thought that the acidity of the soils in Newbury, it's something they see a lot, and they think it's the acidity of the soils in Newbury. That was initially what they were saying. So we talked about doing something to try and protect it from the soils, and that seemed, doing some online research, that seemed to be the most common practice. So we went with that. In the end, it really does look like the more of the pipe, as they were excavating the trench to put new pipe in, they were getting the old pipe out, and it's corrosion from the inside rather than the outside. So it looks like it was just like that pipe.
Stuff that just, it filled right
It was
in.
pitting from the inside and developing leaks. So it does look like it was more bad copper than anything else. Bad running copper, which I've heard rumors of a lot of, you know better than I would, there's a lot of building around here in the late 80s. And I've heard rumors of some of those houses getting a bad running copper. I don't know if that's true or not.
I really haven't had experience with that. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, because I remember the old steel lines going into the house, half inch, I bet.
Yeah.
You know.
So in any case, it's been a hell of a mess, but it's yeah. And I need to work on the siltation. Do I need to have you come in and check everything out when?
No, well, yeah, give me a call.
Okay.
Yeah, give me it would probably be wise for me to ride down by and just.
Yeah. Because the guy who I had doing it was not interested in doing siltation, so I gotta get on that. I'm not gonna pay, I asked him to do it, so I'm curious to see what he did.
You should have just brought him in here just so we could get after him.
Oh, I gave him that emergency permit, he's like, what's this? I was like, it's an emergency permit, that's a weapon. He's like, all right, whatever, just put it in the cab.
I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Get out of here.